do this for the sake of like recording with the meeting notes, and then just go from there. All right. Then, do you want to share the presentation?
Sure.
You got it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
All right, is that okay?
Yeah. All right. So we are doing the Queer the Vote voter registration training. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Let's see. Next slide.
So I will be presenting with Michelle. My name is Emily Gamble. I'm the secretary at the Congressional District 1 level. If you don't know what Congressional District 1 means, that means it's a district that encompasses all of Tulsa County and portions of Wagner, Rogers, and Creek counties. We just wanted you to think about before the presentation why you're here, what do you want to learn, and if you have any bad voting experiences you want to share, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, you can do so at this time on that experience. And then the first topic that we wanted to slide into before we get completely into voter registration was what our mission is training you all to help sign up for festivals, booth activities, and social events at different retail shops, service industries, and bar service areas. So this handout that I will pull out, and this will come to everyone who signs up for an event, and I'm going to put it in the chat. So if you can't read the screen, you can pull it up and guide yourself through it. But what we want you to know first is to volunteer by using the sign up. And again, I'll put that in the chat as well. These are the events that we have already have dates for. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom section and share those 3 events right now with us all. The very first one coming up is on August 16th. We have another one following it on the 17th, and then August 27th. Each of those have different shifts. Some of them are going to be festival-related activities around Queer the Vote. Other ones are just you floating around the rooms, asking, engaging people in voting. Once you sign up, we're going to have Michelle Simmons is going to assign a lead to bringing the supplies to the venue. And if you don't hear from Michelle, the other person on the list is going to end up being the person who is bringing it. But you will also receive a reminder of the activities of where are you arriving at, what time you are assigned the shift, and if it is an indoor-outdoor activity, so that if you are to need to bring any type of personal supplies, like bring your own water, bring your own chair, those kind of things, those will be part of your personal supplies tasks. And then the other important thing, the person who brings the supplies is will be like your point lead at the site. They should be the one that'll end up running how the event's going to run. They'll be the person who you'll want to be your point of contact for any questions. And then if you get stuck on something, Michelle will be a point of contact for you. And then my contact information will be at the end of the slide, so that if there is voting questions that neither of you all can answer for a voter and you want a more instant question answered, I'll have my contact information for you as well. Couple items to think about when you are arriving, the what to wear. We are working on having this be a more nonpartisan booth looking environment. So we are the Stonewall Federation, but there will be venues and events where we have made agreements with our hosts that we are going to be nonpartisan. So you won't have the Democratic flair in some of our spaces, so that we can be an open, affirming area for all who want to engage in voting. Will between each event, there might be a conversation about if you can wear your political dim things or not. But on the general, just know how. Think about just wearing your regular streetwear to the venue you're going to. And so that means like no candidate apparel either. Even if it is going to be a Democrat event, we're going to want it to be non-candidate specific, because we're going to still be registering all voters in this space. But again, the event that you are engaging in is going to be based on if you can put the Democrat shirt on or not. But in general, think of it as a nonpartisan event and for the rules that we have engaged with our host with. Yes, Beth.
So that vote T-shirt that you put on our group chat on Facebook would be appropriate, right?
Yes, that one will be perfect. It's just a general vote logo on a T-shirt, and that'll be very perfect. Let's see. We had information that we talk about, like when people want to know, like maybe the affiliation of who the event is run by. There's contact information there about following the Stonewall's Facebook page. We're not convincing people to vote. We're just inquiring them into the interest of the upcoming elections. They don't have to be Democrat to register with us. And then that last paragraph being, if we're a question of why Stonewall is being in this event initiative, you talk to them about our concerns with making sure that 2SLG BTQIA plus community is heard when it comes to the polls, and we do everything we can to make practicing in election accessible to our community. So just have your personal way of saying that verbally to people that we're in, because just like the title of our goal, we are here in environments where we should be seeing the community that needs to have a say at the polls. Anyone in the room have questions? Missed anything on this particular item? Okay. A couple items that I left out for your slide knowledge. When you're kind of looking at what's going to be provided to the booth, there'll be a supply kit. We're going to talk, you should be seeing registration forms, absentee ballots, a QR code for the voter portal, our calendar of upcoming elections, pens and clipboards. All of our necessary supplies should be available to you in the supply kit that comes. And so this is just kind of showing you what those things will look like, or what you should have. I threw in a few slide images of some past booth activities, just to kind of show you some presentations of some streamlined imaging to your tables, making things viewable, accessible, showing the activities and things that are available to you. So there's a few just inspirational things to think about. And then I kind of, between each section, I put a question slide. So anything so far? Okay. Let's move on. So right now, just to give you an idea of what our outcomes in voter turnout are in Oklahoma. Compared to the rest of the nation, we're a very low turnout state. And specifically here, this stat is on midterm elections. And I use those numbers just because we're running up on August right now, 1st. And we have only about 4 in 10 eligible Oklahomans who actually voted in 2022. And is staying pretty consistent in those numbers as we continue through to today. We sit at 41% of our voting eligible Oklahomas who actually cast a ballot, and that's 6.5% lower than our national average. So what this shows to me, and what I hope this is showing to all of you, even if we are out there registering individuals to vote, we should also be talking about engaging individuals to vote once they are registered. So having that conversation of like, is your registration up to date? Or are you aware there's an election coming up? Are you ready and prepared for it? Those kind of questions are going to be triggering them to actually come back with you on a response of, yes, I am. I wasn't aware, like help them be informed and getting it on their calendar to remind them how important it is, and have our group be one of what they say is, depending on who you're talking to, 1 in 7 people, 1 in 12 people, whichever study you talk to, that's how many points of people it takes to change a mind, talk to someone into doing an action that isn't a goal of theirs yet. My first thing I thought we would talk about before we even get into registering voters is actually talking to people who are not sure if they're registered to vote or how they're registered to vote. We have a great tool that the state election board has set up for us. And as we come into play to these days, we actually have online registration as an option for some people. And I say that woohoo, and we slowly get, I think it's like 10 years later after the law was passed, or however that year was. I don't know the date exactly, but we're going to talk about the Oklahoma Voter Portal. And this is a good place to check if someone is actually registered to vote and can vote. And I'm just going to use my own little name here. And it just takes your birth date and your first and last name. I always tell people, especially when they're registering to vote, use your identifying names that you have on your IDs, and we kind of will talk about that later when it comes to like the IDs that you use for registering. But this should be your first name and last name that you would have used when you would have registered to vote. So don't use your nickname unless you did, but use your first name and last name. This screen should show up if you are a registered individual. If not, it will go into a little like contact your local election board for information, or you may register to vote here. Click here. Then what I wanted to kind of scroll through, this gray area are fast pushing buttons to specific sections in your portal. So this portal is specifically for you and your identifying factors. So don't go pull your things up thinking you can go share it to someone else. You're going to need to have them put their information in. And when you are working these festivals and events that we're registering voters, I highly recommend you taking your cell phone, find your search engine that you use. For me, it's Chrome on an Android, and putting this Oklahoma Voter Portal on your homepage. And you can fastly assist someone in finding this information for them if they're willing and able to let you share their information on your phone, or we will have the QR codes to scan at your table of your event or on your clipboard if you are a walking a fair event. That this is a handy resource to have. The things that people probably don't know you can actually do inside this area is actually, if I've lost my voter ID card, I don't have to make a phone call. I don't realize it until 7 o'clock at night. No one's going to be open to hear my help call. So, and they don't have a voicemail that they're going to return your message. So go to this Oklahoma voter portal and you can actually ask for a replacement right away. Now, I will say, don't give yourself 3 days before the election thinking you're going to get it. Like, give yourself some time. Like, I would say at least probably 10 business days is what I usually tell people when it comes to working with government forms and reports running. I do know that in election season, they probably do this a lot, like on a daily basis right now, but don't guarantee this. Give yourself that time to actually receive it in the mail. Absentee ballots can be requested here. We'll talk about that later if we have enough time. If not, we will turn it into another session with a recording, another part 2. You can change your name. You can change your political affiliation. Online, there are 2 different resources for, like, if you moved inside your county, you can use an online update. If you're going to be moving into a new county, you actually have to use a paper form for that. It's just kind of how the databases are shared between counties, and they aren't. The silos are a little different there. You can change the mailing address. That is actually different than changing your you can change your mailing address when it comes to like your residency versus like your PO box. So kind of know the difference when you're choosing, I still physically want to vote in this home, but I now register a PO box for where I get my mail. So those are your 2 decisions and choices that you're using to tell the election board what you want them to do with the information you just shared to them. You can actually verify your address that they have on file. So like, say you moved and you couldn't remember if you actually changed the stinking address, you can actually verify it here. Now, when you do this, this is going to be the window that comes up next. This is an either or question, and sometimes you may not remember which one it is. So you might have to try the driver's license and it might, and you will have to do the last 4 of your social security number and you'll be like, woohoo, it went through. When I tried this, it actually had my driver's license ID. It did not have my last 4 of my social. So I must have registered with my driver's license when I did so. So if you don't know that, you just got to try one or try the other, and one should work. I will tell you, right, in a personal situation, I was going to sign up for an absentee ballot, and my license number was actually transposed. So I actually couldn't do an absentee ballot request through this portal until that was corrected. And it actually was just an easy, they actually trusted me and did it on the phone with me. And I think it's just because they knew that it was a transposed number and entry error. So if you call your local county election board and have that conversation of like, I can't pull myself in the OK voter portal, they'll usually go through what's your name, what's your birth date, and start going down the 2 items, the last 4 of your social and your driver's license as your IDs. And then they'll work with you from there. Then once they saved it, then they were able they said, give it an hour, then you can go do the portal and sign up for your absentee ballot. And it did, it worked. So never be fearful of advocating for yourself and asking the election board questions. And not to be mean to one person down there or not, but if you don't feel like you got the right answer the first time, maybe call in a couple hours and you might get another person, or physically go down if you can. That doesn't mean that doesn't happen all the time, but I'm just saying that it happens sometimes of someone just not being helpful. It's like going to the DMV tag agency, and sometimes you get a nice one and sometimes you don't. So just kind of think about that when you call. I also don't mind being someone's resource of like, did I approach this the right way? Did I ask the right questions? What should they have been sharing with me? So feel free if you would like to use me for that. I'm happy to help you. I also, well, we'll go back to a piece that it was just in my mind here in a minute. So I am signed up for absentee ballots for the whole year. So every election that's here in this year, I will receive my ballot in the mail in about a month, about 3 to 4 weeks prior to the election I need to vote in. So this is actually telling me that my ballot for August 27th was in the mail and sent to me. And the same with the June one. Now, the received is not marked here because I actually didn't vote absentee. I voted in vote in person. So this part will not be your status for how you voted unless you used that ballot. So don't be worried about that if you didn't use your absentee ballot. This is going to only affect your status if you used that ballot. Now your received should, like if I went and mailed it today, they would probably get it on Wednesday or Thursday. So probably by the end of the week, that little received should be green for me. Now that doesn't mean that my vote has been counted. That is another status, and that won't show up until after a week after the election. So we vote on August 27th. 7 days after the election, there is a certification meeting ceremony of sorts where the certification happens. And then those things will turn the events of all the things that happen in the background for the election board to be doing that make your vote count. Voting history. So these are going to have all of the statuses of what and when I did. We have a really weird law here that there are certain elections that it dots it out because we can't be told how you voted. But in other elections, we can be told how you voted. Screwed up, but whatever. Our state did that to us. So I think it's a lot screwier for candidates, which I don't understand why they did it to their own Republican candidates, but whatever. More work on them, I guess. Spend more money on their operation, their research. But pretty much like my primary election, I can see that I in person voted. But then like my election in April, they can't tell which way I voted. I could have voted in person. I could have voted by absentee. Who knows? They just know I voted. So it'll have quite a bit of your history here. For the upcoming election, they give you sample ballots. You can get it in PDF, HMI, and voting locations. I usually pull the PDF so I can save it to my dashboard of my computer or my phone. If I'm around a printer, and I'll print it out, do my homework, and don't forget that you can actually take that piece of paper into the poll with you with your notes on it. You don't have to put it all in your brain thinking you can remember it all, because especially when it comes to November, you're going to have like back and front and maybe even 3 pages. That's a lot to remember. So give yourself time by sitting down, marking this ballot sample that they actually provide you and take it in with you. Just remember, that is not the one that goes in the machine. Take it back home with you. Don't put it in the trash can. That will be very appreciative to the poll workers. They don't want to see ballot samples in our trash cans. These sample ballots usually show up in the 3 to 4 weeks prior to an election as well. You will not see them any earlier than that. It's usually around the same time that they issue absentee ballots. You'll see this digitally load up. So August is going to be here. It'll clear out at the end of the month. And then we won't see November's until somewhere in the October timeframe. So don't think you'll have it before then. Down below, there's a nice little drive yourself roadmap GPS to my poll. This is where I should go vote on election days, that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in person. This also shows you what county my address I'm registered to is located within, and it gives you all the contact information you would need to find them, get a hold of them. And then the other part here on the bottom is your districts that you reside in. So this would help you if you were needing to do some your sample ballot isn't available for you and you want to start doing your research on candidates, going down here and grabbing Congressional District 1 in Oklahoma and start Googling, and you'll start finding your information on your candidates and things, or even just a map if you'd like to know what that map looks like. And then unless you're running for office, this last little report page won't be anything that'll affect you, but as of this year, the filing, every candidate has to verify their own political affiliation. Like you're going to do the work for the election board. But anyway, there's a piece of paper that you print out and you take with your application to validate your status as a party and your districts and all that jazz, if you're registered. But anyway, that is where that is if you're going to run. So any questions here while I have the voter portal up? Okay. The only other thing I was wanting to show you was back here on the voter portal side, and why I say this is a very helpful address to have as a homepage on your cell phone or your laptop, whatever is your mobiling device or the item that you would have during some active engaging voters. This also has a handy step-by-step to registering to vote online. It'll do your questions here first. And then the next part is going to be talking about the system consenting to match your information. So this means that if you have a digital signature with the state of Oklahoma, you'll be able to go through the rest of these steps. And that really means, have you been to a tag agency to sign the little signature pad to create an ID that has your address on file? If you don't, you will be spit out into the realm of, you will have to do the print method. We are sorry, you can't do it online. I mean, they'll give you a PDF and let you fill it out and find a printer and print it if you would like to be that nice and neat about it and can find yourself a printer. The other method is going to a local library, going into a tag agency, going into your local Democratic Party headquarters, and finding a paper copy of a voter registration form. So I like that they actually thought about this, because if you can't find yourself here registered, you can just click up here and register right away, which is very handy. So I just kind of threw the slide. The next slide, the second slide after this was just having the notes of what I just toured you guys through. So if we ever have a slide deck that needs to be printed out for someone, this is touring the portal we just did. So we didn't have any questions we'll move on. Or if anyone has any input to the conversation. All right, now let's get into the voter registration form. This is a hyperlink, so if anyone ever accesses this presentation, you should be able to click this image and it'll pull up the voter registration. It is 4 pages long. The first 2 pages are pretty much information that I'm going to go through verbally. So we're going to throw ourselves into page 3. If you would like to see this a little bit better than my screen in the chat, I am throwing the PDF into the chat. What I like to do on this page is kind of go one by one fields and kind of give you like little little things that I learn along the way when people fill these out, what they miss, what they don't do, what we want to make sure they do. We're going to always have them make sure that they do the 2 questions at the top. It's always missed. It was missed when it was on the bottom. Now it's missed when it's on the top. This is always a place where when they hand that form back to you, you need to tell them, can you stand here for a moment? I'm going to make sure you have filled this all the way out. And then that's usually when you're like, oh, you actually didn't do the questions at the top. Can I have you mark those? Next part is the last name, first name, middle initial, printing their information. Also their suffixes here. This portion, when we are talking about individuals who might be identifying themselves differently and have some documents in transition for themselves, for IDing themselves, these are going to be where the questions of like asking them, what ID do you plan to take to the poll with you to identify yourself when you go to vote? And depending on that question, they want the last name, first name, middle name to be whatever is on that ID card they take. My big to do to anyone is save that voter card that gets sent to you. Use that voter card every day you go. I usually just put it in my wallet behind my ID, and I carry with me every day. I don't go putting it in a filing cabinet. I don't stick it on the refrigerator. It's in my wallet. That is what goes with me. I know I will be driving myself to the poll that I'm going to vote in, so it's going to be with me. Once you are a voting status individual, you just need to hand them that voter card. That voter card will have the name that's in their registry, and it'll have your party affiliation on it. And you should not have any issues with someone having questions about your identity. We'll talk more about knowing your rights here in a minute, but just on that specific item, know that your last name, first name, middle initial should be whatever your identifying voter ID card should be. Or if you feel like you're not going to be organized enough to keep that voter card on you, you will need to have your state driver's license, your state ID be the matching item for that name you put on this form. Because that is what they'll be asking you for when they ask for your name on the registry at the poll. We can get it. Yes, Tate, go ahead.
I was very curious about something. Have we run into issues where like people are trying to vote with their medical marijuana card and being told that it doesn't count? Or so far has that been working pretty well?
So I will say, being a poll worker, yes, I've had it be used and it's been no problem. And we do have the handbook for our poll workers where it does show the list of allowed identifying cards, identifying items, and that is one. If the poll workers are smart enough, specifically the inspector, if not the judge who does your registry process, they should, if they have questions, either be looking at that handbook that they have with them the whole time election day, or they should be making a phone call to your county election and letting the election board help them identify what is acceptable. And you as a voter know that right, that you can ask them to ask to be calling the election board, and could you put it on speaker so we can hear together. That goes with any question you end up having. Maybe it's something to do with, I was thinking I was going to be voting for Joe Smith today and he's not on my ballot. Can you verify that that is correct? And then that usually is based on, what is your address? Are you residing in the area? Joe Smith may have just accidentally come knock on your door and you're not in his jurisdiction. Those things happen. But that is one of those things. You know your rights about knowing you can ask for them to call the election board and ask the questions that you need clarifying. And then in the very, very end, if you don't feel like the election board is resolving your issue and this is where you feel you want to, you should be voting, this is my poll, I know I'm in the right place, then your last resort is asking for a provisional ballot. And that provisional ballot is a little bit more extra paperwork. It gives a bit more of a proof to your identity for them to approve and give you getting your ballot counted. So if you do ask for a provisional ballot, it is they have you fill out a form identifying yourself. There is a voter registration form that is also filled out as like a double extra step that they have you do, and then you will get your ballots after those forms are done. And then that ballot that you receive, you are not getting it in the machine that day. You actually get put in a manila envelope. And I'm an inspector at the poll. So what I do is there's this bag. It gets zipped up, zip tied, and you get locked in this bright orange bag, and it gets handed personally to one specific person. And they are controlling all of those provisional ballots for the election that day. So you do not get passed over, but do know that provisional voting is you are counted amongst elections that tend to have or do have questions in the count. It is, I will truthfully tell you, provisional ballot voting, you may not be counted, unfortunately. So please take the steps to have the election board phone call be what you ask for first, and then ask for the provisional. And my election day provisional ballot voting people are usually individuals who are name changing and they didn't change their name in the registry. And those are usually who I have. The other one is usually someone who I really believe I vote right here in this poll, and this is where I'm going. I am not going anywhere else. And that's fine. We'll take care of you. You are voting provisionally. When I can sometimes truthfully, they're down the street and they just need to go a block. Yeah, I told them their choice, that kind of thing. The other ones are, just to let you know, provisional ballots are given out to sometimes in primaries when someone's like, I'm an independent and I should be able to vote a Republican ballot. And that is also a provisional piece that ends up happening. As a poll worker, we try to advise them that the Libertarians and the Republicans do not allow independents to vote in their elections in primaries. and there is a choose the option of having the Democratic ballot, or you can sign the registry saying you showed but didn't request a ballot to be issued to you. And then some cases with that one, they usually take a voter registration form and switch parties, and then not do the provisional. They just wait for the next one to actually be under the party they believe they should vote under. So whenever I usually go through this form, I'm always talking about voting questions at the polls at the same time, but hopefully you don't mind that. Birth date is pretty easy going there. The identification number 3, that section, when you hand the clipboard over to someone when they're going to fill this out, let them know that section 3, where you have to give your identification number, just let them know that they choose one or the other. We don't need both. So you can either use your Oklahoma driver's license number or do the last 4 of your social security number. A lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but most people know their last 4 of their socials before wanting to pull their wallet out. We also have in the state, we do have people who still have out-of-state licenses, and they'll have the question of, can I vote here if I reside here? I just haven't changed my ID. And it is a yes, they can use a social security number to register here. The main question is, have you moved here? Do you have residence in the state? And as long as that is a yes, then you can tell them they can register to vote. They just need to choose if it's going to be in this state or the other. And they can only choose one, where there's a DA knock at the door later, which is not good. Political parties, no party when it's labeled here is meaning the independent bucket here in our state. Libertarian Party still on the ballot right now. They are probably edging closer and closer to not having the numbers they need to stay on it, but that is something that'll happen later. But right now, our residents in Oklahoma have the Democratic, Libertarian, and Republican. And then this is a field that the conversation, I wouldn't, unless someone asks you, like, do I need to choose? That's usually when I talk to them about, if you mark no party, there are opportunities for you to be able to vote in a Democratic primary, but you wouldn't have any choices in the Republican and the Libertarian. And you can be honest if you like. Our state is predominantly a Republican state. If you are new to this state and you haven't voted in the past, there are more Republican primaries than there are of the other parties. So you can take that advice as well if you like. That depends on if you want to share that, but it doesn't hurt if you want to. You're not telling someone to vote either or mark whichever. You're just kind of sharing the stats as they are. The other field is probably there for if some other random party decides to collect enough signatures and they get approved by our state to have, like, maybe a Green Party ticket or something like that. The election board's just pretty much saving themselves paper for if that happens, someone can handwrite in that party. So that is why there is another. But I have seen people put independent there, which that's fine. They would just keep put in the no party bucket. Section 5, we're going to talk about the address. The top address is going to need to be your physical location of your address. So your resident 911 address. So I live at 3937 South 93rd East Avenue in Tulsa, Oklahoma, zip code. That is my physical address. My mailing address is actually my 911 address. So if I was filling out this, I would just say same as above. or the person can just write their address again. There are other individuals who purchase a PO box. So if the election board were to contact you, they don't contact you by email, they won't contact you by phone number. This form does not have either of those things given to the state. You would only get letters in the mail, and that mailing address is telling the registration where you want the piece of mail to come to you. This is important to have on hand for the election board when it comes to their communication, and also if you request and issue an absentee ballot, because like maybe you're a college student, you still want to register in Oklahoma for your voting, but I'm going to be moving to New York City, New York, and I have the address in New York where I want the communication from the election board to receive to me. That is what your mailing address would be. Unhoused individuals, they are voters. They are citizens that can vote. The discussion to have with those individuals is to have them, they probably have a service worker or some like day center for the homeless that they may go see regularly. Have them have that service address be their mailing address. And literally I would have that be their 911 address as well. Unless that service, like youth services, is not where they live, like maybe they live near a CVS pharmacy at 15th and Utica, then I would put that 911 address of the CVS pharmacy if I'm the resident who lives outside in a tent next to CVS. Use that. But I would tell individuals that think about something you reside in regularly where they would let you receive your mail, be it a family, be it a social worker, youth services, day center. Those are pieces of places that you can use. A section that someone always misses, county of residence. This is not country. Some people think that they need to write USA here. It is county. So make sure that that is filled out. So like I said, 2 questions at the top and the county of residence are usually the 2 things that people miss when they fill out these forms. The other part is usually signing the signature and date, which the first 2 questions are pretty much the questions at the top recited again. And then the other items are talking about if you're a convicted felon, and we're going to talk about those pieces here more closely in a minute. And then number 6, this is someone who moves from out of state. If you remember where you resided previously, maybe you only know that it's in Rogers County, Texas. You can just write Rogers County, Texas if you don't remember the address of where you were previously. If you were registered in a previous name, write that here. If these are things that you don't recall, just fill what you can. You don't need them all, but it's nice if someone is updating their information, especially if it's name, address, or that change of party. This section 6 would identify to someone changing information in some form. That last little box, it's not very big for what it actually is used for, but this is if someone else helped fill this application out for someone who's registering to vote. Say someone has a shaky hand, has bad handwriting, you would put your contact information in this box as someone who assisted in, you put pen to paper in some way on this form. I've done it where I had mother, child, they spoke Spanish. I am not fluent at all. Child could identify certain things to me and then gave me their driving ID and we together filled using their ID the information for this form. And so I would put my contact information in that box if I touched pinned paper with my hand. All right. Other than we'll talk about convicted felony rules. Is there any other questions, tips, tricks that someone else has had when filling this form out? If you have someone who takes the physical form with them, the backside does have the address of the state election board where they can fold it up, put their return address, put a stamp on it, and mail it for themselves. But again, we're at events that we will want to hope that they will give them to us and we'll turn them in like, that 24 to 48 hours, depending on if it's a weekend or not. But I have been in situations where someone takes it for a friend, takes it for their new 18-year-old high school student. I can't do this right now. I'll take one with me. So know that this is available when it comes to be the forms that come from the election board. You are allowed to copy and on a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, this form and put them in the booth, and they would be valid forms to submit to a county. Just know that either you need to have it on a bigger cardstock where the address can be on the back if you're handing it out to someone who's going to have to mail it back in, or give them address to put on an envelope that they stuff it in. So, all right. Again, this is me pretty much going down what I just spoke to. The only thing I didn't touch was individuals can be 17 and a half to register to vote. They do not have to be 18. It is 17 and a half. That has been a new law in the last 3 years, I think is where we're sitting at. It's not at 5 yet, 5 years. But you can give a 17 and a half year old individual the registration form. They will get their ID card. And once they turn that 18, that next election after 18 is what they use it for. All right. So felony voting rights. I will go in lingo, but feel free to read the page. Well, I'll read the first line because it's a pretty good one to read, and probably how I say things. But so a convicted felon may register to vote after a period of time equal to the original sentence that has passed. So your original sentence equals the amount of time given by a judge, including sentences that are concurrent. So you would add up your 10 years. I served 3. The judge still gave me 10. I have to go through 10. The only way that it is different is if at some point you went through a process of getting that by a judge taken off your service of time. But everyone's usually serving maybe some of their time. They come out, they are on parole. They go for the rest of the 10. Once you're done with your 10, go find that library, tag agency, someone you know, go to the election board, run in there as fast as you can and register to vote. When you are on the street and we do these festivals, usually the magic words from someone who is going to tell you that their next answer is probably something to do with a felony of some form. They have a record. They usually say, I'm not available. I can't vote here, or I'm not eligible. And then as long as they're trying not to run away from you too fast, you usually can try to shoot out the question of why do you think you can't? And then that's usually when they say, I've been to prison, I've served time, I'm on parole. There's usually code words. usually the one that like I've served time, that's usually the question you should be asking. Have you finished serving your term? And a lot of the times, a lot of people, especially if judges want to do it, they'll tell them you have no rights after being convicted. And a lot of people think about it being you have no rights after coming out of prison. You can't re-enroll. And there are states that don't allow it. But here in Oklahoma, in some ways, I think they know that we're just a high convicted felon state. And, and so we have that right for individuals who come back out, have served their time, they are back in society, and they have the right to vote. So if they have questions, I mean, there are individuals who are like not sure if they've served their time, or maybe they just aren't wanting to share if they've served their time. It kind of, that question is always sometimes iffy for some people. And that's when I usually say, let me give you this voter registration form. You go get your advised by a lawyer, your service individual. If you have a parole, find an individual who can help you know if you've served your time, or you look into how much you've served, and then maybe you can fill this out later. So, because some people don't want to share completely if they've served or if they are still serving. The last one is talking about imprisonment and fines and fees when it comes to voting. We also talk about this during someone who has had a felony record, because you don't want them to register if they don't know if they've served their full time, because the election board does not tell them if they've had a record, if they've served their full time. They will not run that until they go to the poll, they go and vote, and then they get run through the system with a red flag. And then that they just go automatically to slapping your hand and risks in jail. You get that 5 years in fees. They don't do any type of auditing at the form application entry. It is on you to do so, which is unfortunate. Yes, Beth.
So do the fines and fees have to be paid as well?
So in our state, we don't have your fines and fees needing to be paid. Our state law is just on time served.
Thank you.
Yep. That is definitely a question asked a lot. That's time served. Okay. Oh, fines and fees also do pertain to someone who doesn't remember if they voted or not. If you don't remember if you voted, I would make a phone call to the election board to ask, or again, use the Oklahoma voter portal, because if they voted ahead of the election day, it would be an absentee ballot. And like we were what I showed you earlier, that status bar should be showing as received. Now, I will have to I'm asking my own self a little question in my head because I haven't really thought about this. But let's say your absentee ballot doesn't show up to the election board in time. Can you actually vote in person? I will need to ask that question to the election board because I don't know if that calls for double voting or not. And I would say yes, it probably does. Even if your absentee ballot doesn't count because it came in late. But I will circle back and try to get that answered. Because I would think the law would still qualify that as double voting, unfortunately. So I don't think the rest of the room probably knows that answer either. But we'll get that answered. let's see. The ask the question came up on my screen. Did someone put a question up for us to answer?
I don't know how that popped up, to be honest.
Did I click something? Let's see. I did something. I have the presentation mode on, and I did something that turned it on, I guess. Okay. Any other questions on the felony votings? Because we're going to go into showing up at the poll, which we kind of gone through some of this through the registration form. So in-person voting on election day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the poll that the OK Voter Portal ended up informing you to go to. And I say the OK Voter Portal tells you because voter cards can get old. Your poll may change on you. You may not have noticed the new one coming in the mail. And like, something like me, my old one is in my wallet all the time. I may have forgotten to go pull that new one out of the mail that told me a new poll. Now, the cool thing about our voter cards, there is a issue date on them. So you will know what year, what month it was issued to you, to like kind of have questions of like, oh, this is like 4 years ago. I should probably look at the OK Voter Portal to see if that 4-year-old voter card is still valid on what it shows me as an address. And I should have taken a picture and showed our voter card here, but I think everyone, at least on this call, I'll put a sample in the next slide at some point for my newbies to this. But your polling place individuals behind that table should be very helpful at knowing the OK Voter Portal and either doing a scan to a QR code that is now present at your polling place for you to scan of the voter portal and helping you find your polling place, or you should have someone who's there at the election board who will make the courtesy call for you to the election board to ask them where you should be voting today. So those two things day of should be things that can help, but I put them under preparation before arriving that I hope that you are doing for yourself. So verifying your polling place, and then being aware of what ID you're going to take in with you. Just the same question. Do I remember where my voter ID card is? If I don't, and I am out of time for getting a new one issued to me, I need to think about what the other IDs that are allowed for me to use. And there is a list that the election board does have on their website. And I should have pulled this up because it made me have a bright idea now, but it's under, I'm pretty sure it's under Voting Act 101 that they list at. And maybe here in a minute I can double check. But the tip and trick in the end to remember is that it should be a state or federally ID, a state or federally identifying card that has been issued by one of those two. And there should be a picture of you, an expiration date that should be current and not expired, and your name on the card. So we got driver's license, passports. We talked about your medical marijuana card, your gun handler's card. A tricky one, but a fun one if you want to be fun with a poll worker. If you go to OSU, OU, State University, those cards work too. That's if you want to be little nasty. Make them look it up because very few people come in with those. Military service ID cards will also work. Beth, go ahead.
I think I asked you specifically this already, but my ex-husband has an ID card issued to him by the Veterans Administration for his medical care that has his picture, has an expiration date, has his name. That's acceptable, correct?
I have not seen that one specifically listed, so I will double check, but that is federally issued. And so that would be a yes to me. If I see
Okay.
that there is no expiration date, and it has to have a specific, like it does expire at some point. It
Right.
can't just be a date issued card.
Okay. I'm going to go look at his card because he never got a license or an ID here and now he can't walk. So thank you.
Yeah, I would double check that, but it's federally issued. I would say that would be valid, but again, double check if it actually has an expiration date to it. We talked about arriving at the poll before, verifying where you are, needing to go. We also talked about knowing your rights when it comes to if you're using your ID card, your voter ID card, especially when we're talking about gender discrepancies here. Sometimes the safest way is just like presenting your card, the voter ID card, and just letting it be your valid identifying your document for them to validate off of. The things that anyone could generally get like questioned on, and this should not be something that a poll worker should be doing, is like questioning someone's address on like their ID. In our state, you do not have to have we do not validate addresses. We don't care what the registration book is versus your state ID. As long as it's a state ID, a federal ID, that's all we care about is the expiration date and if your name matches. The other thing that can be maybe questioned / discussed that a poll worker can approve or move you into, you can sign the book, is the conversations about, I present myself as BJ, but I'm Benjamin in the registry. Those two are similar. They come from each other. So BJ is Benjamin. You should be able to sign the book still. Like during our poll worker training, we were talked about nicknames in that way. Like DJ for David James, or that kind of thing. Those are allowed. I just would also have people be aware of whatever you registered with the election board. Be very mindful of what it is that you have, and make sure that you have the ID that matches that. And a lot of the times it can be faster and easier to change your name with the election board than going and paying for your driver's license ID or a passport. So, and you can get that done for free online. Give yourself 15 days and bam, boom, you got a voter card. And at that same time, you can always verify your address when you've moved or not, on that being something you update and do too, so you don't have any questions with someone at the poll. But someone at the poll should not be like, I need your electricity bill to verify that you've been living here. No, that is not a thing. We are not a tag agency, I think is what would do something like that to you, or a water bill. No, you are literally wanting to vote with your name and a valid ID. As long as you can pass the name match and a current ID, they should let you through. The only time that they should be asking you any questions would be if you issued an absentee ballot to yourself and if the election board has there's where you sign in the registry, in a really gray light lettering, it might say validate address. If it says validate address, that is when the judge should be asking, can you verify if the address I have here in the registry is current? And then usually they verbally recite it, or they'll turn it around so you can see it. And if you say yes, our new policy that's been out in this last year is that we have a form where if you said yes, we have you sign and print, and the judge would put in your address that was in the registry and your voter ID number, and you will be taken off the verify address list for the next election. That means that you're good to go. Usually, just to let you know, triggering effects to this, it's usually like maybe the election board has sent communication to you and it's been sent back to them. There are times where they do DMV tag agency polls, since now that they're using tag agency data to get your digital signature. They may do ID address checks with them. And there are people who, I mean, for me, when I moved to this home, I had my apartment address until my driver's license expired. I still had that address on my driver's license. And if I would have went and renewed it, but didn't change the address, I probably would have been flagged by the election board for verifying my address. So think about that when you're being asked. It might be why you're being asked. I will tell you, no judge, no clerk, no inspector who's working at the poll can answer that. Like, they have no idea why you're being verified. They just are being told to ask the question. So please be kind. Tell people to be kind. We are just being asked what we're asked to ask you. If you do say, I need that my address is needing to be updated, then the judge is supposed to have the inspector give you a voter registration form, and you need to fill out the voter registration there on site. And then the election board has asked us to require you to do so that you can then move on to getting the ballot to vote. We, of course, can't block anyone from voting. So if someone does have an issue with you filling out that form, of course, we move on to resolving the conflict. Let's not make it any heated. We give them the ballot and let them sign the book. And we do a lot of note takings on the voter, not supplying my address isn't current. My situation usually is, if you don't do it today, we'll be asking you at the next election, would you like to do this again? Let's get it over with. And usually people will be like, okay, fine. So they'll sit down, do the registration form. Once they give that back to me, we get a ballot issued to them. They do not have to go back to the end of the line. You jump right to the front, you get your ballot. Well, you sign the book and then you get your ballot. Okay. There is your National Election Protection Hotline. And then usually around the November election, the Oklahoma Democratic Party also puts out a hotline that's a couple of local lawyers who can help you more locally on your voting rights. I also will say, the day of election, if something happens, try to get the names of the poll workers that you identified, had the situation with. If it's a voter in the poll, try to get identifying features, things like that. What were they wearing? And report it to the election board. Don't just go and complain it to a friend that I got harassed, or something of my voting rights wasn't completed correctly. Like, go to the election board, report them, whomever that person was at the poll. And trust me, there are people who get fired for it. I mean, they get fired and they can't return to being a poll worker. And I know those people who have, not literally, but I've been told of the situations and they have been rectified with you can no longer serve as a poll worker. So don't feel that you are not going to be heard if you have to report it for it to be taken care of. And do it sooner than later. And I know that sometimes situations like that are hard to report right away, but find yourself that support of someone who can share in like telling your story to them, and have them maybe be on a 3-way call with you when you call, or have them be with you when you call, if this is going to help you get through knowing your rights and getting them heard and reported. We have a flyer, which is the transform of voter information, and a lot of what I said is going to be helpful in this guide as well. This is going to be the helpful guide that we will have at the table for people to take with. Be it that it'll be the handout itself or it'll be a QR code, depending on how we do our budget for flyers. Do know that this is a national flyer, so it's going to go to national pages for finding Oklahoma and going down to the laws of the land of our state. But it's a very good informative piece of like knowing your rights, getting you those protection hotlines, and that'll be very helpful to give to our people who will be out on the streets giving these informational pieces to. Okay, any questions during that section of our polling rights, or anyone have a story they want to share on this situation?
Yeah, I think we're running out of time. It's almost 8, so we may do this other section or have a recording talking about because I think it's absentee ballots coming up.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to even get to that one today.
Yeah.
We can do that at part 2. The only thing that I would love to make sure we get to is our in-person options and the next days for election. Let's talk about those real quick. Because a lot of people don't know that there's an in-person option for early voting. This is where you would physically go a day or two before the election day to an assigned location that the county you reside in is allowing you to vote. On the state Oklahoma Election Board site, let's show it. If you go to the very front page, they always have a next election link at the very front. And if you click that, you can find your early voting dates, times, and locations for every county here. And I'm just going to use Tulsa as an example. And here for August, they have the only site available for early election is the election board address itself. So let's go back to this slide. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the Thursday and Friday, the week prior to the Tuesday election, you may go to that early voting location. Some counties have like a library or a church and not the election board because they don't rent enough facility space like Tulsa County would. So make sure you're checking where you're going. It is not the poll that you vote on Tuesday. It is never that location. Then the Saturday prior to the election, you can go 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for that site. And then in a general election, that would be like presidential and gubernatorial November elections, you'll have the opportunity to go on the Wednesday from 8 to 6. So they added one more day only to those elections, not every. No primary, no runoffs, just your general. And then, not this slide, But was it the one before? This one. Just to this is also a very good page to just know. Left column is your election. This is your voter deadlines. These are going to be good for us to know when you're on the streets doing your booths. So we are past the deadline for anyone who wants to register for the 27th. So all of our events this month, everyone who registers with us or updates their information, it will not reflect until November's election. So if someone is going to be updating their address or their name or even their party affiliation right now, none of that will go in effect until November's. So they need to go to their previous poll that they were registered at to vote if they were needing to vote in August for something. Absentee ballots. Then we have just a description of what election this is, and then the hours for both election day and in person. And then I will put a few dates of 2025. But there's a great page that the election board keeps up to date for you to see this information in a PDF form. So that is going to do it for today. We'll do a part 2 that kind of takes you through some absentee ballot processes, but specifically for now, just know that you can go to the OK Voter portal and you can go take care of that right there step by step. There is a paper process as well that you can do. And all you have to do is find it under voters and absentee voting. Oh, that was statistics. My apologies. Absentee voting steps are right here as well. Okay.
Thank you so much for all of this, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I learned a lot actually. So it was really great. And then we will put this video or the recording, make that available here the next couple days or so for everybody who wasn't able to attend.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. There's
I'll
nothing else.
see everyone who joins on the Wednesday the 7th for our meeting with CD1.
Yes.
Please come support. We'll be at headquarters, or you can join the Google Meets. And then we all come back on the 12th.
Perfect.
Yes, I'll see you on the 7th. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.